Torah Od, Megillah Esther, page Tzadik Ches. Let's see, 15 lines in the end of the page. 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13 lines in the end of the page. Okay, again, the Alter Rebbe is explaining this concept of Torah is Moshel HaKadmeni, and he says Moshel brings down the thing to a lower level. So therefore, Moshel HaKadmeni, Torah is Kadmeni Shalelim, refers to Hashem higher than Sefer Mamala, the essence of Hashem, and that is brought down through Torah down here. And he says that's higher than the level of name, because name is not the essence of the person. He says, Kach ha-chochma va-teira. He levush learning, so Baruch Hu, therefore Chochma and Teira and Chochma is the garment that allows Moshe, the Kadmeni level, to be revealed. So like it says in the Pasuk, Eiter Kasalma. He spreads out the light like clothing. Therefore, through the level of Teira, therefore, through Teira, you're able to benefit and enjoy this level of godliness from the level Kadmeni Shalayla. Okay, so now there's a parenthesis, so go to the next page. Okay. 196, the first paragraph. You have to skip, it's all part of the parentheses. This is what the Gemara says. The Alter Rebbe asked before, the Gemara says, fortunate is the person that comes and Torah is in his hand. So he said, what expression is this Torah is in his hand? Torah is in your mind, not in your hand. He says, because Kamei benim shulam. Just like when there's a mashal and a nimshal, the analogy and the thing it's an analogy for. It's impossible to understand the intellectual concept. You first have to understand the mashal. Then when you understand the mashal properly, you can understand what it's a mashal for.
Rabbi, if you can't carry it with your mind, can you carry it in your hand?
No, coming in, what it means in your hand is it comes into action. If you learn and the learning stays in the mind and it doesn't come, you learn about Shabbos but don't keep it, you learn about kosher, don't keep it, so then the Torah is not coming down.
I thought if you take one books with you,
yeah, it's good. But then through understanding the mashal, you'll understand the nimshal. And therefore, if you won't understand certain parts of the mashal, so he says, the same thing by Torah. Since Torah, we called it, Shlomo Melech calls it mashal hakadmeni, a mashal for Hashem. That's what this you'll understand. So you have to understand every aspect of Torah. If Torah is a mashal, in order to understand the nimshal, you have to understand every aspect of the mashal. He said that Kain Tzarchli is Talmud biyode. Shabal kanshe de maaseh gam mashal heitiv. By understanding, it's in your hand, meaning you live it, you feel it, because the way you understand something is when you live it. You can understand something, it doesn't come to when you're living it. You're able to understand the nimshal, which is to understand, to make the nefesh understand it better. If the mashal is not in your hand, then you can't understand Torah. Okay? So in other words, like this, the ultimate level of understanding Torah, there's another point that I've explained in different places, is the Gemara says the ultimate understanding of Torah is Lasuke Shvaitza Liba de Hilchasem. If you're learning Stam Torah, okay, which is not relevant in practical, which is not practical, so then the learning is not in depth. When you have to paskin a shaila, when you have to bring it down into action, Lasuke, the Gemara called Lasuke Shmaitze, to establish the law Aliba de Hilchasa. So then, of course, you have to go deeper into it to look at it from all aspects and then decide which one is an action. Therefore, some explanation when it says Gadol Talmud Shemeli de Meisa, they say Gadol. But one explanation, what is Gadol Talmud? What is the greatest level of Talmud? When it brings into action, in other words, you understand the Torah in order to make a ruling in Gashmias. You can't pass him from Torah Shebiksav.
But if you read it and you don't understand it,
No, you get the mitzvah of learning Torah.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean there's the in-depth level of Torah that you're going to understand the Lukus by this. It's not the level of Torah which is Chachmasei Shel HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that you're bringing down into your own understanding.
What about, like, let's say, Kabbalahs? I mean, it's not something that we do.
So that's why when you learn Halacha, it's not Hilchas L'Maisa, so you don't learn it in the same depth and the same way to figure out what is the right way of doing it. So he says, Al Kain, Mashen Kain Shem B'Yodei HaMoshel Ainli, that them Turitz, this answers the movement and explains a different Chazal. The Chol Mi She'ef Shelasik B'Torah V'Eina Isik. The Gemara, stop. The Gemara says, whoever has the ability to learn Torah and doesn't, all of them are Ikaris Dikaris. He asked the question before, the Alter Rebbe asked this question before on top of the page over there. The Gemara says, whoever could learn Torah, the Alter Rebbe brings down this Gemara in the first page of Tanya, right? Whoever could learn Torah and doesn't, all of a case, Kasavemer, Dvar Hashem Baza, he Karis Dikaris. You're shaming the word of Hashem, you should be cut off. He says, Alpha Gavdami She'ef Shelei Dai Beperek Echad Shachas Beperek Arvis. So, but according to Halacha, some people could learn a little bit in the morning, a little bit at night. So what do you mean they couldn't learn Torah? Is one understand it by what he explained before about a mashal. What does that mean? Not all things that we call a mashal, okay, not all mishalim that people say it's a mashal is really a mashal, in the true sense of a Torah mashal. Why? Sheyesh seichel v'nimshul asher yechelin lamed avei mashal echad pashut v'kal. Certain inyanim you can understand through a very simple mashal. V'yesh seichel gadol yaser. There's a deeper seichel though, that in order to understand it you need deeper mishalim and greater, more mishalim. V'gam ha-mashal na'alev al-makyeser. Okay? He says like this, about the mishalim of Shlomo HaMelech. The Gemara says, in the end of Seitek, Shemeis Rab Meir, when Rab Meir died, Botlu Meishli Mishalim. The people that are able to give a mashal died. It stopped the level of giving mishalim. Today every time Dick and Harry gives a mashal. But Rab Meir's mishalim were like Shlomo HaMelech's mishalim. The Gemara says about Rab Meir was so brilliant. Lo yardu chachamim l'seif daita shel Rab Meir. Rab Meir's mind was too deep for the chachamim to understand. And explains an interesting halacha. According to the rules in halacha, if there's a al-machlekes Rab Meir, Rab Yehuda, Rab Meir, Rab Yesi, Rab Meir, the halacha is not like Rab Meir. Rab Meir, Rab Yehuda, halacha, Rab Yehuda. Halacha, Rab Meir, Rab Yesi, halacha, Rab Yesi. So Mefarshim explained, if Rab Meir was so smart, he says because the Chacham couldn't understand it. Torah you have to paskin based on your understanding. Right? Like it says, Chassidus explains that Beis Hillel, Neshamas came from Chesed, therefore they're lenient. Bishami Neshamas came from Gvura, therefore they're strict. Bishami is sometimes Mekel and Beis Hillel sometimes Machmer, because in Kedusha you have Chesed Shebegvura, Gvura Shebechesed. That's what it is. So Chassidus asks the question, L'chayra, Leiba Shemaimi, you can't pass Torah based on heavenly things. You're saying, why was Beis Hillel Mekel? Because the neshama came from Chesed. But that's heavenly, that's not earthly. It's like Bashamayim. So Chassidus explains, yeah, the neshamas came from Chesed. But that caused that the physical mind understood it in a Chesed way. But they understood with their brains, physical seichel, that you have to be mekel. But it wasn't that they paskin based. So it said, Kimisha chachmasei amuka yesed, a person with a deeper seichel, nitzrech l'mishalem yesed, needs more mishalem, k'dei lamed al yadam al emek chachmasei. And therefore, k'she'ein ha-chachma muka, if it's not a very deep seichel, you don't need a deep mashal. You don't need a mashal at all sometimes. Therefore, kol chachma muka yesen, the deeper the chachma, you need ribi mishalem until you get it. Or like it says, Shlomo Melech had 3,000, and a Meir had 3 mishalem. V'kach hinei ksiv l'mayla. Harei ein kol hasav v'shon neshama shav. So now he says like this. Torah is mashal ha-kadmeni. So through Torah, you understand the level of kadmeni. Kadmeni is shalela. But now that the Rebbe is saying, but every neshama or every brain is different. So every brain, even through Torah, understands godliness different than the other person. Huh?
It's dangerous.
Why is it dangerous?
Because everybody can say, I interpret the Torah my way.
Yeah. We're talking about doing it the way the Torah says you have to interpret it.
Right.
Okay. So when somebody interprets the Torah the way the Torah... So he said, one second. Okay? He says like this. Every tzaddik, the Gemara says, gets burnt from the chuppah of his friend. Now, so every neshama has its own place in Gan Eden. He says, "Mi shedali perak echad shach perak echad shedali b'moshel zeh la'arich hasaga shel shorshon sama haynu davke she'ef shelasik shezeh orei shedali b'zeh." In other words, like this interesting concept Dr. Rebbe is saying. The fact that Hashem made this person only have to learn a little bit in the morning and a little bit at night means for that person, that level of the neshama is enough to awaken that level of the neshama. But it's not the depth of a person learning Torah a whole day. Every person is different. For some people, it's understanding this way. Many times you can have a kid learn Chumash. Okay, kid goes to school, learns Chumash. Yeah, they learn Bereshit Bara Elokim Es Hashemayim V'Tzoretz, and they define in the beginning God created heaven and earth. They get 100 on the test. They know the pasuk beautifully. Yet the greatest of minds didn't begin to understand that pasuk at all. The greatest of minds didn't understand. Does that mean the kid doesn't understand it? On the kid's level, he understands it. But is that the ultimate level of understanding? No. The kid himself, when he gets older, will understand it deeper. Even if he's not such a brilliant kid. But later on, he'll be more mature, he'll understand it better. So in Mashal, because Mashal Kameni is saying there's different levels of Mishalim. There's different levels of understanding. So therefore, there's still infinite different levels of one person understanding better. And Al Rebbe in Tanya many times uses the expression when he speaks about understanding Torah, he says, "Ukfi asagas sichlei," based on his understanding, "Ukfi sheidish nishmasi l'mayla," based on the level of his neshama. A greater neshama has a greater understanding of Torah. We said many times, the Baal Shem Tov said that any person that asks him a question in Torah will answer it, and any statement in Torah he'll refute it.
Any statement of Torah would be
in other words, if you have a question, Baal Shem Tov will answer it, and if you say a statement, the Baal Shem Tov will refute it. So Chassidus explains it's not an ego trip at all.
Refute.
So he said, what's the explanation? There's levels of Torah in Bria, in Atzilus, Bria, Yitzir, and Asiya. Neshamas that come from the world of Asiya understand it on the level of Asiya. Neshamas that come from Yitzira understand it besides the brain. There's two aspects. You can have a brilliant head, but if your neshama comes from Asiya, then you're not going to have the same depth of a neshama that comes from Bria or a neshama of Atzilus. So, a question in a lower world, in the higher world, is not a question. An understanding in the lower world, in the higher world, there's a not understanding of it. So because the Baal Shem Tov's neshama was so great, he was able to tap into the depth of his neshama at a deeper level that he could answer your question and refute the statement that you said. Because it has to do a lot with the level of the neshama.
Which one is more precious? A higher level of neshama or a higher K brain?
You have to have a keli.
The lower level of neshama?
You can have a lofty level of a neshama, but you don't learn. What's going to happen?
You're not correct.
Both are important.
What?
I think both of them are important.
Yeah.
One does not displace the other.
100% not. I said, the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, based on your understanding and based on the level of your neshama.
Yeah. Everybody's gifted differently.
So they see, there's a level of understanding, there's a not level of understanding. We mentioned also many times, Rabbi Kiva Eger, who lived in Mittel Rebbe's time, he was very close with the Mittel Rebbe. He was a brilliant, brilliant scholar. Okay? He has, in his commentaries, he has Tzarchi and Gadol. Many times he remains by Tzarchi and Gadol. You need to really look deeply into this. Okay? It says before he wrote Tzarchi and Gadol, he threw through the whole Shas first, before he would write Tzarchi and Gadol. Okay? In yeshivas, it's a big thing to answer Rabbi Kiva Eger's Tzarchi and Gadol. Okay? So one time, Rabbi Kiva Eger had a certain question in learning that he had no answer to. And he once walked into a base matter somewhere, Balabatim, where you're having a Gemara shir. Yeah, and the Rabbi was teaching the Gemara shir, and everybody understood. Yeah, they all understood, and they closed the Gemara and they went home. And Rabbi Kiva Eger was crying afterwards. He said, look at this, these simple Jews merit to understand, and I don't begin to understand. But his not understanding was infinitely greater than their understanding.
What type was he, intellectual or spiritual?
He was both. He was a very holy man.
But it seems like you can't be both.
Holy tzaddikim are both.
Really?
Yeah. You're also both. I'm not going to say both of what. Well, leave it at that. Leave it to your imagination. So he says, but somebody who could learn Torah, that itself is a lesson showing from above, that you could understand more. In other words, like this. Hashem demands from a person what the person is able to understand. Okay, what the person is able to understand. When Hashem puts a person with not such a good head, and not such a lofty neshama.
You talking about me?
No, God forbid. So that person, Hashem is demanding less from him than from a tzaddik. It's obvious, right? So a person that, not stam, he says, I can't do more. A person is busy, whatever, and Torah itself says, Torah paskins, that this guy has to learn a little bit in the morning and a little bit at night. That means that's what's expected from him. And when that guy, by the way, learns a little bit in the morning and a little bit at night, he fulfilled his mission that Hashem gave to him. Somebody, though, who could learn Torah a whole day, or more of the day, so obviously Hashem is expecting more from this person in the learning of Torah. Then the Gemara says, if you don't, you're able to learn Torah. Not that you can't, Torah says you can't. You're able to, you don't want to. So then, then you're shaming the word of Hashem.
What's expected?
Because it's expected, meaning you have a better head, you have a better brain, and neshama. More is expected from you to learn the in-depth of Torah with deeper mishalim. And by the way, again, nobody could judge anybody else but Hashem.
He knows.
It says, in Pirkei Avos, it says a Mishnah, Shein don yechidi ela echad. It says, don't have a bezdin of one person, Shein don yechidi ela echad, right? Don't judge a person, only yachid. Okay, so it means the only one that has a right to judge a person, b'chlal, the only one that has a right to judge a person is Hashem. Why? Hashem knows who the person is, what's expected from him, what his tests are, what his challenges are, and therefore Hashem knows if you fulfilled your mission or not. How am I supposed to be able to judge you? You know, I probably could. How do you know, how am I able to judge you? Do I know what's going inside you? Do I know your challenges? Do I know your neshama level? Do I know your ability level? We don't know. One thing the Rebbe did do is whatever your level was, he said you could do more. That's what the Rebbe pushed. He didn't expect two people to be the same level. The Rebbe wanted, and the Rebbe pushed and encouraged everybody, you have to do more than you think you could do. Not like somebody else. You can't be somebody else.
Whenever you are.
Reb Zusha Poller said, when he comes upstairs, after the disciple of the Maggid, the good friend of the Alter Rebbe. So when I come upstairs, after 120, they're not going to beat me why I wasn't the Maggid. How can I be the Maggid? They're going to beat me why I wasn't Zusha. In other words, they're going to beat me why you weren't who you could be, you should be. The Rebbe took it a step further. Whatever Torah says you could be, you could do more. You could still do more. Because every person could do more. That's, by the way, the whole concept of Yitzias Mitzrayim, in a spiritual sense, of a person to go out of his limitations. So again, a guy that could learn 10 minutes a day, and now learns 11, went out of Mitzrayim. A guy that could learn 2 hours a day, and learns 1.5 hours a day, it's still deeply in Mitzrayim.
Somebody is listening to two people are listening to the concept of the Gemara.
No two people understand it the same way.
Somebody picks it up like this, right away. And the other one, you have to explain. So, what is this? Is it the loftier level of neshama, or is it the keli that person has?
The brain? I don't know. Could be both.
Nobody knows.
Hashem knows. A person that could look at you and see your neshama, a tzaddik that could look at you and see a neshama, so
He knows.
he knows. You know, people used to marvel how the Rebbe didn't see somebody for 20 years, and the Rebbe remembered them and knew them, the last conversation they had. Yeah? So, the Pashtus, the Rebbe had a brilliant memory. Even Rabbi Yosef Salvation, JB said about the Rebbe, he has a phenomenal, he said, unbelievable memory. Okay? Yes. But it wasn't only that. I look at you, I see a body. Okay? You age, your body changes. So I might not recognize you. Okay? But the neshama doesn't age. Neshama doesn't change. If I see your neshama, and I recognize your neshama, so what's the difference now, 20, 30, 40 years later? You didn't, the neshama, I see the neshama, I don't see the body. I mean, you see the body also, but you see deeper than the body. You see the neshama, so I know what your neshama is. That doesn't change. So when a person's learning Torah, some people, by the way, you have in Pirkei Avos the various different levels of Talmidim. You know, gets it fast, forgets it fast, gets it slow, forgets it. Okay. Sometimes a person who gets very quickly, it's very superficial. And sometimes a person who has to take a long time to do it, right? When they get it, it's a deeper getting. There's two ways of learning, even in yeshivas today you have it. It's called either Bekias or Amkus. There's two ways of learning. It's a Gemara in Hayriyas, Rabbi and Rabbi Yosef. Some people learn a lot. They learn a lot. And other people don't learn as much, but they go deeper into it. It's two different styles of learning. Huh? No, it's not that. Anyway, okay, to be continued.